They're sitting right next to you, smiling, acting normal, but something feels off. That gut feeling you can't shake, it's trying to tell you something. The ancient Stoics knew that evil doesn't always show up wearing a villain costume. Sometimes it sits across from you at dinner, works in the next cubicle, or even sleeps under your own roof. Let's cut through the noise and talk about the subtle but unmistakable signs that someone has darkness inside them. Not the obvious red flags everyone knows about. I'm talking about the sneaky ones. The ones that slip right past your defenses until it's too late. Today, I'm breaking down 6 psychological red flags that reveal someone's true nature, signs that the Stoics warned us about thousands of years ago, but most people still miss. Some of these might make you uncomfortable. Others might hit too close to home. But by the end of this video, you'll never look at the people around you the same way again. Let's dive into the first sign, and trust me, this one's going to change how you see your closest relationships. Number 1. They create chaos and claim innocence. Here's something that might shock you. Truly evil people don't just participate in chaos, they orchestrate it. But here's the twist. They never seem to be directly responsible for anything. Sound familiar? Think about that person in your life who's somehow always at the center of every drama, every conflict, every broken relationship. Yet somehow, they're always the victim, never the villain. They're masters at stirring the pot while keeping their hands clean. What makes these people so dangerous isn't just their ability to create chaos. It's their talent for making everyone else think they're the solution to it. They're like arsonists who join the fire department, setting blazes, just so they can play hero putting them out. I remember someone like this from my own life. Let's call her Sarah. She had this incredible talent for turning friends against each other with subtle comments and well-timed revelations. "Oh, I probably shouldn't tell you this, but," was her favorite phrase. She'd plant seeds of doubt, watch them grow into full-blown conflicts, then step back and watch the show with innocent eyes. The most chilling part? She always had perfectly clean hands. If you tried to call her out, she'd look at you with those wide, innocent eyes and say, "I was just trying to help," or "I thought they should know." She'd even comfort the people she'd hurt, offering a shoulder to cry on after she'd orchestrated their pain. The Stoics warned us about these people. Seneca called them conflict merchants, those who profit from others' misery. They don't just observe chaos, they need it. It's their lifeblood. Without drama and conflict, they'd fade into the background, and that's their greatest fear. Here's the deeper truth. Evil doesn't always announce itself with malicious laughter and obvious schemes. Sometimes it wears a concerned face and speaks with a sympathetic voice while sliding the knife between your ribs. These people are masters of plausible deniability. Let me give you another example. I once worked with someone who could destroy an entire office's morale without ever raising their voice or saying anything explicitly negative. They'd just ask innocent questions. "Oh, did you hear about the layoffs in other departments? I'm sure it's nothing to worry about." Or, "I noticed the boss talking to HR about your project. I'm sure it's fine though." Each comment was like a perfectly placed domino. One small tap, and they could watch the chaos unfold while maintaining their position as the concerned colleague who was just looking out for everyone. These people leave a trail of destroyed relationships and broken trust wherever they go. But if you look at their track record, you'll notice something strange. They're never technically at fault. They're just the messenger, the observer, the shoulder to cry on. But somehow, everyone around them ends up hurt or betrayed. The real danger lies in how they make their victims blame themselves. They're so skilled at manipulation that people walk away from interactions feeling like they're the problem. Maybe I am too sensitive, or I guess I shouldn't have reacted that way. It's a form of psychological warfare that leaves no fingerprints. Think about it. When was the last time you felt everything spinning out of control, but there was that one person who seemed to have all the inside information, the one who always knew what was going on, who was always there to help, but somehow their help only made things worse? That's their signature move. They create an environment of confusion and mistrust, then position themselves as the only stable force in the chaos. It's like they're playing chess while everyone else is playing checkers, moving pieces behind the scenes while maintaining a perfect poker face. The Stoics taught us to look for patterns, not isolated incidents. If someone is constantly surrounded by drama but never seems to be directly involved, That's not coincidence, it's strategy. These people are emotional arsonists, and they're experts at making their fires look like accidents. Remember, chaos doesn't just happen. In most cases, someone is orchestrating it. And if you look closely enough, you'll usually find the same person standing in the background, watching their handiwork unfold with a concerned smile on their face. Want to know the scariest part? Right now, someone watching this video is realizing they know exactly who I'm talking about. They're thinking of that person in their life who always seems to be at the center of every storm but never gets wet. That's not an accident, that's design. Number 2, they test your boundaries repeatedly. This one's subtle but deadly. Evil people don't just cross boundaries, they probe them constantly, looking for weaknesses. It's like they're running a continuous security test on your personal limits. And trust me, once they find a crack in your defenses, they'll exploit it until there's nothing left. It starts small. So small you might not even notice it. A slight invasion of personal space. A question that's just a little too personal. A favor that's just a bit too demanding. Each one seems innocent enough on its own. But there's a pattern. They're mapping out your defenses, learning where you'll bend and where you'll break. I once knew someone who was a master at this. Let's call him Mike. He'd ask for small favors, each one slightly bigger than the last. Can I borrow your phone for a quick call? Became, can I use your laptop for an hour? Became, I need your car for the weekend. Each request came with a story, a reason, a way to make you feel guilty for hesitating. But here's what's really chilling. He didn't just do this with material things. He'd test emotional boundaries too. He'd make slightly inappropriate jokes, watching your reaction. If you laughed uncomfortably, he'd push a little further next time. If you called him out, he'd retreat with a quick, I was just kidding, only to try again later in a different way. The Stoics understood this concept deeply. Marcus Aurelius wrote about the importance of maintaining strong boundaries, not just for our peace of mind, but for our very survival. Because here's what most people don't realize. These boundary tests aren't random. They're calculated, deliberate, and methodical. I remember watching Mike work his magic on a new coworker. First day, he borrowed her stapler. Second day, her laptop charger. By the end of the week, he had her passwords, just in case, and was borrowing money for lunch. Each time she tried to refuse, he had the perfect response. Oh, don't you trust your teammates? Or, I thought we were friends. These people are like water looking for cracks in a dam. They push here, probe there, always testing, always watching for signs of weakness. And once they find one, that's when the real invasion begins. That's when they start taking, not asking, assuming instead of requesting. The truly insidious part? They make you feel guilty for having boundaries in the first place. Why don't you trust me? We're friends, aren't we? I would do it for you. It's emotional manipulation disguised as intimacy. They turn your legitimate need for personal space into a character flaw. And here's something most people miss. It's not just about getting what they want in the moment. Each boundary they cross is a test for the next one. If you let them borrow $5 without paying back, they'll ask for $50 next time. If you let them make one inappropriate comment without objection, they'll push further next time. Think about someone in your life who always seems to want just one more thing. Someone who makes you feel selfish for saying no, unreasonable for having limits, uptight for wanting personal space. That's not friendship, that's manipulation. What makes this especially dangerous is how they use your virtues against you. Your kindness becomes a weakness. Your patience becomes a tool for their manipulation. Your desire to be a good friend becomes the very chain they use to bind you. I've seen relationships, careers, and lives destroyed because people didn't recognize these boundary tests for what they were. By the time they realized what was happening, their boundaries weren't just crossed, they were obliterated. The Stoics taught us that true strength isn't just about building walls, it's about knowing which ones to maintain at all costs. Your boundaries aren't negotiable. They're not up for debate. And anyone who makes you feel bad for having them is showing you exactly who they are. Remember this, people who respect you will respect your boundaries. Period. No guilt trips, no manipulation, no subtle tests. If someone in your life is constantly pushing against your limits, that's not an accident. It's a strategy. And it's time to ask yourself what their endgame really is. Because here's the truth. By the time you realize your boundaries have been compromised, it's usually too late. The damage is done, the precedent is set, and rebuilding those walls becomes 10 times harder than maintaining them would have been in the first place. Number 3. They mirror your vulnerabilities. This might be the most chilling sign of all. Evil people don't just observe your weaknesses, they study them, learn them, and then reflect them back at you to gain your trust. It's like watching a predator perfect its camouflage, except instead of changing colors, they're mimicking your emotional wounds. Let me tell you something that most people don't realize. True empathy and emotional mirroring might look similar on the surface, but they're worlds apart. When someone's mirroring your vulnerabilities, they're not trying to understand you, they're trying to become you, or at least the version of you that's easiest to manipulate. It's like emotional camouflage. They listen carefully when you talk about your struggles, your past traumas, your deepest fears, not to understand or support you, but to create a false sense of connection. They'll even share similar stories, carefully crafted to match your experiences. And here's the terrifying part, they get better at it with practice. I experienced this firsthand with someone I thought was becoming a close friend. Let's call her Rachel. Every pain point I shared, they had a matching story. Every vulnerability I revealed, they had been through something similar. Had trouble with your parents? So did they. Struggled with self-doubt? They knew exactly how that felt. Went through a devastating breakup? They had an almost identical experience. It felt like I'd finally found someone who truly understood me. Until I realized something wasn't adding up. The details of their stories would shift subtly depending on who they were talking to. When another friend mentioned their struggles with anxiety, suddenly Rachel's story changed. Now her experiences perfectly matched theirs instead of mine. The Stoics warned about this too. Epictetus said that true connection isn't built on shared misery but on shared values. These people aren't connecting with you. They're collecting information to use against you later. They're building a database of your vulnerabilities, carefully cataloging every weak spot, every insecurity, every fear. Here's what makes it so dangerous. They don't just mirror your past experiences, they start mirroring your current emotional state. If you're feeling insecure, they'll match that energy. If you're feeling hopeful, they'll mirror that too. It's like they're emotional chameleons, changing their colors to match whatever will make you trust them most in that moment. I remember watching Rachel work her magic on a group of people. With the career-driven friend, she had stories about corporate betrayal and professional setbacks. With the romantic, she had tales of heartbreak and lost love. With the spiritual seeker, she had experiences of profound personal awakening. Each story was perfectly tailored to create maximum emotional resonance with her target. The truly terrifying part? They use these mirrored vulnerabilities to justify their own toxic behavior. I know exactly how you feel about trust issues. That's why I went through your phone. Or, we both struggle with abandonment. So you understand why I can't let you spend time with other friends. They weaponize your pain against you. Think about someone in your life who seemed to have an uncanny ability to relate to everything you've been through. At first it feels like fate, like you found your spiritual twin. But look closer. Are their stories a little too perfect? Do they shift slightly with each telling? Do they use your vulnerabilities to justify their own bad behavior? Here's what most people miss. These emotional mimics don't just mirror your vulnerabilities to gain your trust. They do it to create a sense of obligation. Because if they've been through the same pain as you, how could you possibly deny them anything? If they understand your struggles so perfectly, how could you ever question their motives? The Stoics taught us that true strength comes from acknowledging our vulnerabilities without letting them define us. But these people? They want your vulnerabilities to define you. Because the more you identify with your pain, the easier you are to manipulate through it. Watch out for people who seem to have a story that perfectly matches every struggle you share. Real human connection involves both similarities and differences. If someone's experiences mirror yours too perfectly, they're probably not showing you their true self. They're showing you a carefully crafted reflection of your own pain. Remember, vulnerability is powerful when shared with the right people. But when someone uses your vulnerabilities as a blueprint for manipulation, that's not connection, that's exploitation. And by the time you realize it, they've usually already collected enough ammunition to cause serious damage. Stay aware, stay strong, and remember, not everyone who says "me too" is telling you the truth. Number 4. They have an answer for everything. This one's tricky because we're taught to admire people who seem to have it all figured out. But there's a dark side to never being wrong, never being uncertain, never admitting to mistakes. Let me tell you why this might be the most dangerous red flag of all. Think about it. We live in a complex world where even experts admit they don't have all the answers. Yet somehow, these people never seem to encounter a situation they can't perfectly explain away. It's like they're carrying around an encyclopedia of excuses, each one more elaborate than the last. Evil people don't just have explanations, they have perfect explanations. For everything. Every accusation, every questionable action, every inconsistency in their story has a ready-made response that makes perfect sense on the surface. It's like they're running an internal PR firm dedicated to making them look infallible. I knew someone like this. Let's call him James. No matter what he was caught doing, he had an explanation that was so perfectly crafted it made you doubt your own perception. Late to an important meeting? Traffic. Plus his phone died. Plus, he was helping an elderly person cross the street. Money missing? A series of banking errors, plus a misunderstanding, plus he was actually about to pay you back even more. What made it so effective wasn't just the explanations themselves. It was how quickly and confidently he delivered them. No hesitation, no uncertainty, not even a moment's reflection. It was like watching a master performer who never breaks character. The Stoics emphasized the importance of humility and acknowledging our own ignorance. As Socrates said, true wisdom begins with admitting how much we don't know. But these people, they know everything. They're never wrong, never uncertain, never at fault. They have an answer for everything because admitting uncertainty would crack their perfect facade. Here's what makes this especially dangerous. Their explanations aren't just convincing, they're exhausting. They wear you down with details, with perfectly logical sequences of events, with stories so complete that questioning them feels like paranoia. They make you feel crazy for doubting them. I remember watching James explain away a major mistake at work. He didn't just have one excuse, he had a whole narrative, complete with witnesses, timestamps, and documentation. He could tell you exactly why each person involved had misunderstood the situation, precisely how the communication had broken down, and specifically why none of it was his fault. It was like listening to a lawyer present a case. Every possible angle was covered. The truly insidious part? These explanations often contain just enough truth to be believable. They'll mix real events with fabrications, actual facts with convenient fictions, until separating truth from lies becomes almost impossible. Here's the truth bomb. Real people make mistakes. Real people get confused. Real people sometimes say, "I don't know," or "I messed up." If someone in your life has a perfect explanation for everything, they're not more competent than everyone else, they're just better at lying. Watch for people who never seem to need time to think about their responses. Normal people pause, reflect, sometimes struggle to remember details. But these individuals, they have their stories ready to go, like they've rehearsed for every possible scenario. And let's talk about the detail level in their explanations. Normal people's memories, uncertainties, fuzzy areas. But these people can give you minute-by-minute breakdowns of events from months ago, complete with dialogue and weather conditions. It's not because their memory is better, it's because they're creating rather than recalling. The most dangerous part, their explanations often make you question your own reality. They're so confident, so detailed, so absolutely certain that you start to wonder if maybe you're the one who's wrong. Maybe you did misunderstand. Maybe you are being too suspicious. Remember this: uncertainty is human. Doubt is natural. Anyone who claims to have perfect clarity in every situation is either delusional or lying. And in my experience, it's usually the latter. Stay alert, trust your instincts, and remember, sometimes the most suspicious answer is the one that seems too perfect to question. Number 5, they make you doubt your reality. This is where things get really dark. Evil people don't just lie to you, they make you question your own perception of reality. It's gaslighting taken to an art form, and let me tell you, it's one of the most destructive weapons in their arsenal. Imagine living in a world where you can't trust your own memories, where every certainty you have is slowly eroded until you're not sure which way is up anymore. That's what these people do. They don't just bend the truth, they bend your entire reality. They'll deny saying things you clearly remember them saying. They'll rearrange events to make you seem crazy for being upset. They'll confidently state that something happened completely differently from how you remember it until you start doubting your own memory. And the worst part? They do it so smoothly that you don't even realize it's happening until you're deep in the fog. I went through this with a former boss. Let's call him David. He would make promises in front of others, then completely deny them later. He would give instructions, then claim he said the opposite when things went wrong. Small things at first, but they built up until I was constantly second-guessing myself. Here's what makes it so insidious. They don't start with big lies. They begin with tiny distortions, small enough that questioning them makes you seem petty. No, I didn't say Tuesday. I definitely said Wednesday. I never promised that deadline. You must have misunderstood. Each little twist of reality seems harmless on its own, but together they form a web that can trap you for years. The Stoics knew that our perception of reality is our most valuable possession. When someone tries to distort that, they're not just lying, they're attacking the very foundation of your sanity. They're trying to make you dependent on their version of events, their interpretation of reality. Let me give you a specific example. One day, David told me to prepare a presentation for a client meeting. I spent days working on it, checking every detail with him. When the meeting came, he claimed he never asked for a presentation. In fact, he said he specifically told me not to prepare one. I was so sure of my memory, but he was so confident, so convincing, that I started to wonder if I was losing my mind. Here's the truly dark part. They don't just gaslight you about events. They gaslight you about your emotions too. You're being too sensitive. You're overreacting. No one else has a problem with this. They make you doubt not just what happened, but how you feel about what happened. Watch for people who frequently use phrases like, "That never happened," "You're too sensitive," or "You're remembering it wrong." If you find yourself constantly questioning your own memory and judgment around someone, that's not a coincidence. It's a strategy. They're not confused. They're confusing you on purpose. These people are like emotional architects, slowly rebuilding your reality brick by brick until you're living in a house of lies that they designed. And the scariest part? They do it so gradually that by the time you realize something's wrong, you're not sure if you can trust your own instincts anymore. Think about someone in your life who makes you feel crazy for remembering things differently than they do. Someone who can so confidently deny something happened that you start to wonder if you imagined it. Someone who makes you apologize for reactions to events they claim never occurred. The damage these people do goes deep. It's not just about the immediate confusion, it's about the long-term erosion of your self-trust. Every time they make you question your reality, they're chipping away at your ability to trust yourself, to stand firm in your own truth. Here's what the Stoics understood. Our perception of reality, our ability to trust our own experiences and judgment, is fundamental to our existence. When someone deliberately tries to distort that, they're not just being manipulative, they're committing a kind of psychological violence. Remember this, your memories are real, your feelings are valid, your perceptions matter. If someone in your life is constantly trying to convince you otherwise, that's not a red flag. That's a blaring alarm siren with flashing lights. Trust your gut, document everything. And most importantly, remember that someone who truly cares about you will want you to trust yourself more, not less. Number 6. They punish kindness. This last sign is perhaps the most revealing of all, and trust me, once you see it, you can't unsee it. Evil people don't just fail to appreciate kindness, they actively punish it. They see compassion as weakness and exploit it whenever they can. It's like they're offended by goodness itself. Let me put this in perspective. Normal people, even difficult ones, generally respond to kindness with at least basic appreciation. But these individuals, they see your kindness as an invitation to take more, push harder, demand greater sacrifices. It's like they're allergic to decency. Think about someone who becomes more demanding, more disrespectful, more aggressive the nicer you are to them. Someone who takes your forgiveness as permission to hurt you again. Someone who sees your compassion as a weapon to use against you. They're like emotional vampires, but instead of blood, they feed on your goodwill. I watched this happen to a friend. Let's call her Emma. She kept trying to help someone who consistently took advantage of her. The more understanding she was, the worse they treated her. The more she forgave, the more they pushed. It was like her kindness was blood in the water, attracting sharks. Here's what made it truly disturbing. This person would actively seek out opportunities to take advantage of Emma's giving nature. If she offered to help once, they'd demand help every time. If she made an exception for them once, it became their new expectation. Every act of kindness was treated like a signed contract for future exploitation. The Stoics understood that while virtue is its own reward, not everyone deserves unlimited access to our good nature. Marcus Aurelius wrote about the importance of being just while also being wise, knowing when to extend kindness and when to withdraw it. Because here's the truth they understood: some people don't just fail to appreciate kindness, they resent it. Let me share something personal. I once worked with someone who would specifically target the kindest people in our office. They'd identify who was most likely to help, to cover for others, to go the extra mile, and then they'd systematically take advantage of them. The more someone tried to help, the more this person would demand, until they'd literally drain them dry. What makes this behavior so toxic is how it corrupts your natural instincts to be good. These people don't just take advantage of kindness, they make you question whether being kind is worth it at all. They try to turn your virtue into a vulnerability. Here's the brutal truth. If someone consistently responds to your kindness with cruelty, to your understanding with abuse, to your forgiveness with more transgressions, they're showing you who they really are. Believe them. They're not confused, they're not misunderstood, they're predatory. And here's what most people miss. These individuals often target kind people specifically because they know kind people will keep giving chances, keep trying to understand, keep hoping that this time will be different. They count on your goodness to enable their evil. Watch how they treat people who do favors for them. Do they show gratitude? Or do they immediately start planning how to get more? Do they reciprocate kindness? Or do they just take it as a sign that they can demand more? The pattern is usually crystal clear if you're willing to see it. Remember this: your kindness is a gift, not a debt. You don't owe anyone unlimited access to your good nature. Being kind doesn't mean being a doormat, and having boundaries doesn't make you less compassionate. The Stoics taught us that true virtue includes wisdom. Sometimes the wisest thing you can do is recognize when your kindness is being weaponized against you, and have the courage to stop enabling someone's toxic behavior. If you recognize this pattern in your life, in your relationships, or in your workplace, don't ignore it. Your instinct to be kind is beautiful and valuable, but it needs to be protected, not exploited. Direct it toward people who appreciate it, not those who punish it. Because here's the final truth: people who punish kindness don't just reveal their own evil nature. They try to make you question the value of goodness itself. Don't let them win. Keep your compassion, but pair it with wisdom. Be kind, but be wise about who deserves that kindness. Your good nature is a strength, not a weakness, but like any strength, it needs to be used wisely and protected fiercely. These 6 signs we've discussed: creating chaos while claiming innocence, testing boundaries repeatedly, mirroring vulnerabilities, having perfect explanations for everything, making you doubt your reality, and punishing kindness, they're like pieces of a puzzle. One piece alone might not tell you much, but when you see multiple signs coming together, that's when you need to pay attention. Watch for these signs. Trust your instincts. Remember what the Stoics taught us, that true character is revealed not in grand gestures, but in small, consistent actions over time. It's those little moments, those subtle patterns, that tell you who someone really is. If you recognize these signs in someone close to you, don't panic, but don't ignore them either. The first step to protecting yourself is acknowledging what you're dealing with. You can't fix evil people, but you can protect yourself from them. Remember, you're not responsible for someone else's evil nature, but you are responsible for how you respond to it. Choose wisdom over naivety, boundaries over endless forgiveness, and self-respect over self-doubt. Sometimes the bravest thing you can do is walk away from someone who's showing you who they really are. Let me know in the comments if you've encountered people showing these signs and how you handled it. Your experience might help someone else recognize and deal with the evil hiding in plain sight in their own life. Stay strong, stay wise, and most importantly, stay true to yourself. Some people might call you paranoid for watching for these signs, but as the Stoics taught us, it's better to be careful than to be sorry. Remember, evil doesn't need you to believe in it to exist. It just needs you to ignore it. See you in the next one.